Warning: some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Funeral organizers of Reddit, what are the weirdest or most unique funerals you have organized? As a funeral music planner and organist, I've worked with families on many funerals to honor special requests. One was a Wizard of Oz themed funeral, where the deceased woman had loved the original movie and requested that music from it be used. Pallbearers and friends of the family dressed in costumes of the principal characters as they entered the church, including dozens of munchkins, Toto and a witch. There wasn't a dry eye after the eulogy when the soloist sang Over the Rainbow, but many smiles as the coffin was carried out of the church en route to the cemetery as everyone sang "We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz." I've been in the funeral industry for over 10 years now, and most services I have arranged have been run-of-the-mill. Most people seem to want similar things, but one service will always stand out to me. A family asked us to play some hardcore gangster rap for their mother/grandmother at her service, and we happily obliged. I can't quite remember the name of the song, but it had heavy themes of murder, drug use and pretty foul language. Her service was then finished with a recital of the Lord's Prayer. This lady was in her late 80s. When my grandfather died, we had a request we were afraid was odd, but the funeral director told us he'd seen much stranger, so it was okay. My grandfather was big into motorcycles. He had Harleys as long as I can remember, and even after he had his hip surgery and the doctor told him not to ride anymore, he retooled his bike into a trike so he could still ride. So after he died, my uncle outfitted the trike with a special rig, very secure and very safe, so that we could take him to the cemetery in his coffin on the back of the motorcycle. My uncle drove the motorcycle while all the members of my grandfather's riding club circled him from the funeral parlor to the cemetery. It was badass and awesome, and I know my grandfather would have loved it. I am not a funeral organizer but a control engineer. During a project I worked with a guy who did the crematorium oven systems, and he had some good stories. Story 1, a young guy died in a diving accident. His friends and family wanted him to be cremated in his diving suit. The crematorium guys told them they could not do this, but did not tell the reason. So the family decided to sneakily put his diving suit underneath his normal clothing, to give their loved one a proper farewell. So, the core goes into the oven, the neoprene suit catches fire, and if you have ever seen a car tire fire, you know what comes next. Picture the scene: a lovely bit of countryside with lush green fields, birds tweeting, elegant crematorium in the center, with huge black billowing clouds of smoke coming out of the chimney, to be seen and smelled all over the area. Whoops! The next obvious one is the sneaking of bottles of expensive whiskey in the pockets of the deceased, popular with the Indian population. I won't have to tell you that the combination of an 800°C oven and a bottle of 40% volume booze is an exciting one. Best one was the story of the eco-friendly coffin. This crematorium had a system where the coffin during the ceremony would be lifted with 2 metal forks, the oven door opened, coffin gets inserted in the oven, door closes halfway, forks retract in the coffin, pressing against the door stays in the oven, and finally the door closes completely. Well, this system is perfect for wooden coffins, but this guy was into his environment etc. and had an eco-friendly coffin made of some type of recycled cardboard. The forks lift, the oven door opens, the forks slide in, the coffin disintegrates instantaneously when it meets the intense heat of the oven, the door lowers half, the forks retreat, taking the body back outside of the oven. Family and friends are distraught. Staff try with broomsticks to push the corpse back in the oven, total chaos ensues. I once went to a funeral of a young person who died from a terminal illness and had planned her own funeral. She had a white coffin, and at the graveside everyone took turns to sigh the coffin/write messages in colored marker pens. It was pretty touching. Not a funeral organizer, but one of my sisters was killed by a drunk driver, so as a family we were trying to figure out what to do for her funeral/memorial. She was cremated, so we had a lovely memorial at my dad's place outside, and planted a couple of trees for her. My sister had a big personality in life and she loved to have fun and make people laugh. My other sisters and I decided that rather than wear black, we would wear the most outrageous ball gowns we could get our hands on. Mine ended up being black with peacock feathers embroidered all over. One of my other sisters wore an enormous orange tutu. She would have absolutely loved it. It helped make the day a little less bitter and a little more sweet. A Viking funeral. Putting the ashes of the deceased out to sea in a little boat fashioned out of salt and covered with dry flowers/kindling. Fashioning biodegradable arrows with flaming tips. Everyone shot flaming arrows at the boat and it caught fire, then dissolved into the sea. Now to be clear, Vikings never did any of this, but Hollywood gave people ideas. Apparently I am not the first. But it was cool. Put the fun back in funeral. Late to the party, but I'll add my own. I'm not a funeral director, but a few years ago when my grandmother died, miss you Granny, my 2 sisters and 2 cousins were preparing her body for the viewing, as they were all cosmetologists. I should say that my family has a bit of a strange sense of humor. And for anyone that says this might be disrespectful, my granny would have laughed her ass off at this. So anyway, they are putting on all her makeup and they are playfully arguing over how it should be done. Eventually, this escalated in them comparing their own makeup to what they were doing for Granny. They were joking about who did the better job, and to get an accurate depiction, they were lying down next to the coffin, closing their eyes and folding their arms on their chest, and the others would compare. They would then adjust both their own makeup and Granny's to get it right. It was at this point that the funeral director walked in. He opened the door, saw my cousin lying on the floor as though she was dead, with the others giddily adjusting Granny's makeup and using my dead cousin as a reference. There was an awkward pause for a few seconds before the girls all burst into laughter. The funeral director was visibly uncomfortable and silently left. After all was said and done, they went to apologize to the director, admitting that they were just having a bit of fun. He said it was alright, just a bit strange. He admitted that he did chuckle a bit as he was walking away. Fast forward to the service, a family friend was giving a eulogy and the girls are looking at Granny up front in the coffin. They are trying to hold back smirks to each other, and a few people are noticing. They look to the back of the room, where the funeral director is standing. He flashes them a smirk himself, then closes his eyes and pulls his hands to chest to imitate a dead person in a coffin. Apparently, it took everything they had to not burst out laughing on the spot. Not a funeral director. But I've attended a funeral where there was a pop quiz on my friend's life, and if you got it right you'd get a lollies, smiley face, smiley face. There was also a playlist that had everyone up dancing. R.I.P. Barb. Best non-tragic one for me. Pallbearers so drunk they could barely stand let alone carry the casket. They agreed to wheel out on a trolley. Some still holding their goon sacks, bladders used in box wine for you non-Aussies, in their free hand. I went to a pre-funeral once. Our friend knew he was going to die, so he had his own funeral while he was alive. That was different. Former funeral director. Usually ran the back of the house but met with families on a few occasions. Met with the parents of a 16-year-old girl who had died in a car crash. Arrangements were tough at first because how could they not be? We got the official stuff out of the way and then talked about what she, the deceased, would have wanted. Ended up rearranging the funeral home so that the lobby had crock pots of boiled peanuts and a lounge with the Lion King playing. Inside the main parlor was a purple-themed dance party. The pinnacle of the evening was the girl's mom leading everyone in doing the wiggle. It was amazing and I am still floored by this family for being able to really celebrate their daughter's life in this way. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily videos, and join the Spooky Squad.